Hi, everybody, and welcome back to Checkmate the Matrix. Today, I have a good friend of mine, Barry Mitchell, who's come on the show for us to give us a bit of background on his work and what he's been doing and what he's up to now. So, a fantastic guy for many different reasons, and also another fellow martial artist. So, very happy to have him on. And Barry, how are you doing?
Yeah, hi Peter. I'm doing very well, thanks. How are you?
I'm very good, very good. All the better for seeing you on here. Very happy
Oh, I
with
can
it.
understand that. I can understand that.
All right, brilliant. So, I mean, we've actually met a few times, and going back to, I think, the first time in London, possibly about 2 years ago or something like that. But
Yep.
that was it. One of the trust sort of like scenarios working in with them barristers,
Yes.
but which obviously that was a really good event, that and how we actually got connected to them. But what I'd like to do is just, for you to give you a background of where you've been and what you've been doing and how you actually got to the position that you're in now, if you don't mind.
No, only too pleased. Very often when people ask me this question, I might start off with, "Well, I was born at a very young age," but I think I'll skip the few years after that. But I had a very successful, highly specialized business lining tanks, reservoirs, lakes, lagoons, landfill operations, specialist flat roof applications. I ran that business for 15 years. I started it from scratch, literally with no money. I absolutely loved that business, and and I even won the contract to line all of the cold water storage tanks when they were building Canary Wharf. And more importantly, given what happened to Canary Wharf, I even got paid for it. Not without a fight, I have to say, but I did get paid. Um, the we then came into the 1990s, and I have to say my business was very successful. It was cash rich. I never had any financial problems whatsoever. Never missed any payments or anything. But nevertheless, one evening during the Christmas period of 1998, I got a phone call 7 o'clock in the evening from my bank manager, and with whom I had a very good rapport. And he phoned me up and said, "Barry, there's a letter in the post to you. It's time sensitive, and whilst I think about it, I'm going to turn the sound off on my phone before I'm interrupted with that. It's time sensitive, and he was concerned that I might not get it in time because of the Christmas post. Obviously, this was before the days of computers. And he was telling me that the bank wants me to reduce my debt by £42,000 within the next 28 days. Now, the fact that they were asking this was really annoyed me because they didn't look at me, they didn't look at my business, they took a blanket decision. We all know that in times of recession, the construction industry is the first and worst to suffer. And so they were just calling in money from industries that appeared to them to be at risk whilst we were in a recession. Um, but as I said, if they would have looked at me and looked at my business, they wouldn't have needed to take such action. Anyway, I said to the bank manager, I'm not going to do that. If I were to do that, that would jeopardize my business. We all know most businesses fail not because they're not profitable, they fail because of cash flow problems. And I didn't want to be one of those companies. And you'll understand this, Peter, being a fellow martial artist, when he said the very worst thing to me that somebody could say, he said, "No, no, you have to." And I'm thinking, don't tell me what I have to do. Um, anyway, I said to him, "What if I don't?" And he said, "Well, they'll foreclose on you." And I did a quick calculation in my head, and I said, well, if they foreclose, they're going to lose about 40 odd thousand pounds. And without any hesitation, he said, well, they'll just write it off. And I said, well, okay, leave it with me, and I'll think about it. Anyway, we put the phone down, and I just asked myself a couple of basic questions. How long and how hard do I have to work in order to recoup £42,000? And when I thought about it, I realized that the whole reason for me being self-employed was for me to work for me, not for the bank. And so I made a decision. And the following morning, I went straight to the bank, drew out all of my money, and became gloriously unemployed for something like 3 or 4 months. I'm not saying that was a scary period, but I dealt with it and it all worked out exactly as I strategized. However, during that glorious period of unemployment, I met up with somebody. I can't remember now who that somebody was or even what his name was. But we had a fascinating conversation, a conversation in two halves. The first half was explaining the extent to which banks and building societies cheat us and rob us. And the second half was what you could do about it. And the two halves were joined by a single powerful sentence when he said to me, the reality is the banks, the building societies, the financial institutions are too big, too powerful, too institutionalized. You can't fight them and win. But what you can do is learn and understand the system and learn how to use that for the benefit of your clients rather than for the benefit of the bank.
Yeah.
And immediately I thought, yes, I can do that. And I was introduced into the world of what was known then as Aussie mortgages. And when I talk now to people about Aussie mortgages, whether it's mortgage advisors, financial advisors, the vast majority have no idea what I'm talking about. But actually, it was the precursor to flexible mortgages. So anyway, it was 1999. I trained as a mortgage advisor. I was allocated to a team of mortgage advisors, and within 2 months, I was outperforming the team, which quite impressed me actually. But so that was 1999. Through hard work for sure, and a lot of luck equally for sure. By 2003, 2004, as an individual, I was the most successful mortgage advisor in the UK. So much so that very often, if I wanted to negotiate my own mortgage deals, my own mortgage rates, very often I could negotiate directly with directors of banks. Now, take it from me, mortgage advisors, financial advisors never get to talk to directors of banks, but I did. And little did I appreciate then that how beneficial that was going to prove to be in the future, because over and above the technicality of the subject, when you're talking to these people directly, you get a real insight as to the language that they use, and perhaps more importantly, the way they think. Anyway, so there I was, a mortgage advisor, a very successful mortgage advisor. There was just me and my PA. We were directly authorized, and I was writing consistently between 10 and 20 mortgages a week. If you talk to a mortgage advisor and they're telling you they do 5 to 10 mortgages a month, they're doing well. And as I said, I was doing between 10 and 20 a week. consistently. Then we had the crash in 2008. All of my areas of speciality died overnight. And I thought to myself, okay, I've spent years helping people get debt they wanted. Now I'll help people get out of debt they don't want. I think they call that recycling. And
Yeah.
So I formed my own debt management company, which was called Recro Debt Management Services. Recro, RECRO. Recro is Latin for rebirth. And it seemed to me that if I could help people get out of debt, it will feel like they've been reborn. So I thought it was a very appropriate name. It was reasonably successful from the beginning. It was never going to change the world, but it kept a roof over my head and food in our belly. And about, I think, 18 months, maybe 2 years later, I merged my business with Lightside Financial. I'm still with Lightside Financial today, and Lightside Financial is regulated by the FCA for debt management, debt counseling, etc. Excuse me. So over the years, as I've been involved in the financial industry, I was beginning to learn more and more about the very subjects that you specialize in, Peter. And I'm now very proud of the fact that I'm able to help resolve people's or businesses' financial problems, both from within the regulated arena and also in the unregulated arena. And sometimes these solutions are a mixture of both. And I think it's that ability to have both sides is what makes our offering really unique. And take it from me, we have saved the lives of many, many people over the years.
Well, yeah, I would definitely agree with that. And you can see that, with knowing what you do and how you can actually restructure. Definitely on the personal side, restructure a life, even if it's their business, it's still them that has to deal with it. And the way that you've been able to help a lot of people to manage the debt one way or the other. I mean, we know that the debt problem is spiraling beyond control. It goes up to something like £5,000 a second on the UK debt clock. I mean, that's just it's. I can't even get my head around that, going up that fast, that size quickly.
Well, there's two things to say about that. Number one, on the formal sort of regulated side, there are 10 different debt solutions. And those solutions can be standalone solutions, or they can be used as a mix and match. And then we can add in the mix as required of the non-regulated solutions. And the bottom line is that no matter what the financial problem is, there is always, but always, a solution. Nothing upsets me more when marriages break down just because of money. And nothing upsets me more when people commit suicide just because of money. The reality is there is always a solution. And also, I'm being pedantic. I'm going to pick you up slightly. Technically, I am in debt management. However, that is a term that I really dislike. I don't want to manage debt. I want to resolve it. So I like to think of myself as being in debt resolution, not in debt management.
That sounds a lot better. Yeah.
And then the other side of it is really knowing how money works And of course, this is the overlap that you and I share, Peter. Talking to people about that, um, separating out the rubbish and the nonsense that one often comes across from the fact, and then analyzing the factual side as to what is practically useful and what isn't. Because you can be factually or technically correct, but it's of no use to you whatsoever. So I'm very focused on just what works, what gives the end result.
Yeah, I mean, that's actually a very good point, because I think there's a lot of people now that are preying on the fact that and it's widely known, I think now, that how the banks work, rather than actually lending money to the public, shall we call it, that they actually deal in securities. Therefore, when it comes to whatever it would be, like say unsecured bank loan, maybe a credit card and a mortgage, that you actually create the credit rather than the bank lending you money. However, is that helpful to know if you can't cope with it anyway? So there are ways that you can deal with things, but I do see people trying to form solutions where I don't really think that there is one, by using that information. Do you know what I mean?
I know exactly what you mean. And I had a phone call this morning, uh, somebody saying that a friend of theirs is in dire trouble. They're being threatened with repossession. Gave me an indication of the sources of various debts, and told me they tried to rebut council tax on the basis that they're not lawfully required to pay it. That they've sent promissory notes to offset some debts, and they've also done something with postal orders. Not sure exactly what that was. And the fact is, technically, all of that might have been correct, but the end result is they're still facing having their property repossessed.
Yeah. So I mean, that's the thing as well, like we're saying, like about promissory orders, promissory notes. I mean, that it is actually factual that these exist and that they have been used, etc., etc. But again, it has to be in such a way whereas like the whole thing fits together. And what they're doing, and what I've seen a lot of like cases of people doing, it's very similar to forgery. Like going into like maybe like Frank Abagnale's, maybe he's not as big as him, but surely writing checks, which is what it is really, a promissory note, when there's nothing to actually back it up, can kind of get you into some serious trouble.
Sure. And this is why, um, a little bit of knowledge is probably more dangerous than no knowledge at all. And talking about that also, number one, having the right knowledge. People often say knowledge is power, but I disagree with that. What I say is putting knowledge into action has the ability to be powerful.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm going to make sure I write that down. That's a very good term. Yeah. I like that.
But I thought it might be useful, interesting for our audience to have a couple of understandings about different things.
Yeah.
Number one, never bury your head in the sand. If the problem is there, then deal with it. It will always get worse if you try and bury your head in the sand. And so that's point number one. Point number two, I'm often telling people that I am the ultimate DIY expert. DIY don't involve yourself. In other words, I am the expert in what I do, but if I want something done that's outside my area of expertise, then I will go to the relevant expert. And funny enough, Peter, you and I are examples of that, where we know our own areas of expertise, which is why sometimes you refer people to me, sometimes I refer people to you, because we both recognize this is the borders, the parameters of our areas of expertise. Don't go outside it. So if somebody is experiencing financial problems, they can come to me, they can come to so many different bodies. There is so much free information. And we as a business, Lightside Financial, give full free advice. We don't charge anything unless we actually do work, but we give full free advice. And very often, having given full advice, the actual advice is don't use us, but I'll point you in the right direction of who I think is best. So my next philosophy is to always do right by the client, even if it means not doing any business.
Mm-hmm.
And it's remarkable over the years how many referrals I've had from people that I never actually did business with. And it's purely that, because we always do what's right by clients, even if it means not doing any business.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, it's not even just a noble cause. It's just extremely good business for yourself and for the client as well. I've seen so many other like companies, if you want to call them that, or people that will try and make a product fit the client, you know, and actually push them in, is try to put a square peg in a round hole just so they can actually make some kind of deal or sale or business, rather than saying, you know, like, what we have is great, but it's not what you need. You need something from somebody else that I know, and being able to pass it on, which is, I think, one of the best things I think that we have is the contacts and the network that we've actually been able to build up, so I can pass people on, you know, to yourself or to others, you know, that I know that they're great at what they do, rather than trying to do something and I've got an idea on that, but you know, it's a bit out of my sort of like realm of expertise.
And absolutely. The other major rule, I'll tell you a little story about this. It's a major rule of mine. Never tell people your problems. Only ever tell people their problems. And I live my life by that. Going back to when I was gloriously unemployed, there was a second charge on my property at that time, not to do with the bank that I was referring to before, and they were threatening repossession. And at that time, I knew nothing about debt management, debt counselling, nothing. You know, I was completely ignorant of that side of things. Anyway, for the first 3 months, the sorts of conversations I was having with the bank was, how can you do this to me? I've got a wife and 3 kids. We'll be out on the streets. How can you do this? Blah, blah, blah. And they just weren't interested. They don't care. So that's another rule. Understand the value of not caring. Them not caring can work for you as well as against you. Whilst they don't care about you, they don't care about how much money they lose. All they care about is that they can demonstrate that they got the best they were going to get in the circumstances. And I've got a few examples of that if we have time to talk about it. But going back to the situation, for 3 months, I was saying, you can't do this to me. I'll be out on the streets, wife, 3 kids, and they simply don't care. And one day I was driving home and I had this light bulb moment, and I really told myself off, you idiot, you've been breaking your own rules. And I came home and said to my wife, I think we can negotiate our way out of this. And that resulted in a 5-hour journey to the head office of the bank for what turned out to be a 20-minute meeting, and then a 5-hour journey back. But in that meeting, I basically said to the bank, I'm only in this situation because of the stupidity of the bank, but there's no point talking about that. The situation is what it is. And I think my total debt was about £62,000. And I said, I've come to make a full and final settlement offer of £17,000. And the woman that I was talking to went, £17,000? That's absolutely outrageous. Why on earth would the bank want to accept that? And I said to them, look, the other bank has the first charge. You have the second charge. We're in the middle of a recession. If you repossess the property, how long will it take before you actually get it sold? And at what price will it sell at? And what happens to empty properties that are left on the market? Windows get broken, doors get taken off the hinges, radiators taken off the walls, so everything floods. So this is my offer. And she said, well, we'll do a bricks and mortar valuation. And off we went. And at that point, as we entered into fresh air, my wife burst into tears, saying, that's it, we've lost the property. And I was thinking, did she hear the same conversation that I heard? And I said, don't be silly. I said, we've got a 50-50 chance of getting away with this. And she said, how do you work that out? And I said, well, they're not going to throw good money after bad doing a bricks and mortar valuation if there's no way they're going to accept my proposal. And she said, oh, do you think so? And let me tell you, the journey home was a very quiet journey. Anyway, 3 days later, the bank phoned me up, confirmed that they would accept my offer, provided I paid it within 28 days. I said I would do that, provided they confirmed it in writing. I got the letter 2, 3, 4 days later. But during that period, I was thinking, why would I want to give them all of that money in one go? It's not that I didn't have it, but why should I give it to them? So I dragged it out over a period of a year. And that was one major headache that went away. But it only went away when I stopped telling them my problems and I started telling them their problems.
Mm-hmm. No, that makes a lot of sense.
And it's a major thing with banks. They don't care what they lose. They just care that they can demonstrate they got the best they were going to get in the circumstances.
Mm-hmm.
And when you understand that and you can apply it, it's unbelievably powerful.
Yeah.
The other thing that I thought would be worth mentioning is a relatively new facility that not many people know about, and that's called breathing space. And I know you and I, Peter, have spoken about it, but I think it would be good for the audience just to be aware that this exists.
Yeah, definitely.
Breathing space is a government initiative introduced because of COVID initially, and is administered by the Insolvency Service. You can only access breathing space through people like me, i.e. FCA regulated for debt management, debt counselling, etc. And there are two types of breathing space. There is standard breathing space and there is mental health breathing space. With standard breathing space, the breathing space lasts for 60 days, 2 months. And you can enter into breathing space once in a 12-month period. Now, the process is online. And if, Peter, I were to put you into breathing space now, you would immediately be in breathing space. And once you're in breathing space, court hearings can't proceed, bailiffs can't act, banks, building societies, credit card companies, etc., can't contact you, can't add charges, can't add interest. Any other creditors are not allowed to chase you, and that's for a period of 60 days. And one hopes that during that 60-day period, we can come up with a strategy that we can then put to the creditors that they will accept, and therefore avert the action that they were threatening to take prior to entering into breathing space. It's also worth knowing that the majority of county courts now have a dedicated breathing space email address so that they can easily be notified and they would act on it immediately. So if, Peter, I were to put you into breathing space right now, you would immediately receive an automated email from the insolvency service informing you that you are now in breathing space. Similarly, your creditors would also receive an automated email informing them that you're in breathing space and essentially telling them back off. There's nothing you can do. So that's standard breathing space. Now, we don't make any money out of this. We have a fee of £300, and that just covers our administrative costs. So it's not designed from our point of view to make a profit, but it's a wonderful tool that just buys time. In this case, 60 days of time. The alternative to standard breathing space is mental health breathing space. If you are under the care of an approved mental health practitioner, we can put you into mental health breathing space, which is exactly the same as what I just described. However, you're not restricted to 60 days, nor are you restricted to the 12-month period. So, for example, you might be under the care of an approved mental health practitioner. And then let's say after 3 months, you've been making progress. So you are discharged. And so we take you out of breathing space. And then 2 months later, you have a relapse and you go back to your health practitioner. We would put you back into breathing space. And the fee we charge for that is £500 because there's much more administration that needs to be done. Mm-hmm. So it's worth knowing that breathing space prevents all action and it buys time. And very often, especially with standard breathing space, very often, in fact, I had a conversation like this morning. Somebody has the potential need, and I said to him, fine, I'll send you the paperwork, which is minimal, by the way. I'll send you the bank details so that you can pay the £300, and I'll hold everything on file. And when we can see the whites of their eyes, for example, one such client phoned me to tell me they had a note post through the letterbox informing them that the bailiffs were coming the following day to remove goods to the value of. And I said to him, don't worry, I'll put you into breathing space. So I had everything. I had all of the paperwork. I put them into breathing space, and cut a long story short, the bailiffs never did come. We did come up with an acceptable strategy, and everything is plain sailing and stress-free.
That's absolutely brilliant. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think on the side of like the mental health one, you can tell, I've been dealing with a few different companies. You can tell to try and be a bit softer with that if it's brought up. And the people that that I know of that have been through that and they've got mental health problems and they do have some debt issues, have been able to explain it to the actual debt collectors. And I was quite shocked at how kind of how amiable they were to actually try and help, rather than just be such boom straight down the line. I think obviously if they probably know that there is this breathing space available, but maybe I presume that they're regulated, the debt collectors, but they certainly don't seem to be willing to shout about that.
Oh no, absolutely not. Listen, at the end of the day, their job is to collect money, so they're not going to help you in that respect. But on the other hand, it's true the majority of creditors, like banks, credit card companies, if you tell them that there's a mental issue or a health issue, they usually are more sympathetic. But this is a formal arrangement that gives you a specific period of time where they simply can't proceed with anything.
Mm-hmm. No, that's absolutely fantastic.
The other thing, two things actually. Unfortunately, there is no register to say who is an approved mental health practitioner. And there's a difference between being qualified and being approved. So normally one would have to be referred via their doctor in order to do that, or I could refer somebody. They can make direct contact, and but the other thing is a lot of the approved mental health practitioners, they themselves have not heard of breathing space, and so I have to educate them as to how it actually works and why we're doing it, which is quite amusing.
Okay. Right. Well, that's a good service.
Lastly, I have, because it can take time to be seen by a mental health practitioner, on a couple of occasions, I've put somebody into standard breathing space, which gave me the 60 days. And then towards the end of that 60-day period, because we had the right documentation, I was then able to put them seamlessly into mental health breathing space.
Yeah, no, that would work well for situations like that. That's for sure. Yeah. Excellent. So the what I would like to talk about a little bit as well, because I know that we've actually dealt with this between us, is how you what is the term again there? If like sort of like people can't see any other way out of it, and they're sort of like the end of their tenor, shall we say, on how you actually handle like a managed bankruptcy rather than letting them run off and do it on their own.
It's difficult to go into too much detail within a podcast like this, but I'll just start off with a few sort of preambles. Number one, number one philosophy: own nothing, control everything. Because if nothing else, that puts you in a very secure place. And then we're heading towards understanding trusts, etc. Any assets should be put into trust at the time that you acquire the asset. So firstly, what is the difference between a will and a trust? Fundamentally, a will is a wish list. If I die, this is what I would like to happen. But that can and often is challenged. Whereas a trust is a legal instrument. So the reason that most people place assets into a trust is, number one, on death, those assets do not form part of the death estate. They don't need to be mentioned in a will. They don't form part of the death estate, and therefore they're not included in the calculations as to whether there are death duties or not. Perhaps more importantly, because it doesn't form part of the death estate, the beneficiaries of the trust do not have to wait for probate. The moment the grantor, the person setting up the trust, dies, that asset immediately becomes the property of the beneficiary. Just to avoid a mistake that many people make, many people seem to be under the impression that if you sell an asset, let's say a property, that's held in trust, that avoids capital gains tax, and it doesn't. So if let's say a father puts property into trust to his son, and then the father sells the property, which the trust would allow him to do if it's set up that way, technically the son is liable for the capital gains tax. So the whole idea, if you look at the Duke of Westminster, their assets, that they own most of London, but all of their assets are in trust, and it just gets passed on from generation to generation. They don't sell those properties. So these are real reasons why you should put assets into trust. Similarly, anybody that has a life insurance policy, the life insurance policy should be put into trust. So again, when the life policy pays out, the recipients, the beneficiaries, get the payment immediately. They don't have to wait for probate. So these are the reasons why one wants to put things into trust. So if somebody comes to me with financial issues, the first thing I ask is, what assets do you own, and are they held in trust? Because it just so happens that by and large, if the asset is held in trust, then it can't be touched within the arena of bankruptcy. So it becomes very valuable from that point of view. These are the areas that we look at, and this is us really thinking outside the box.
Mm-hmm. Okay, that's very good. There's I think a lot of people don't actually realize, or I find that, when you're talking to people, that they don't actually realize that by having their assets placed on trust, as soon as you get them, like exactly what you said, as soon as you actually, let's just say you've invested in a family home, then that should be, put into a trust. I like the saying, I've said it many times myself: own nothing, control everything. But then if you did get into a situation and you ended up in a bankrupt situation, that if it's in trust, it doesn't form part of your estate. So the bankruptcy itself are only going to be what do you call them again? The receivers, they're only going to be looking at your estate, right? Although they might question you about it, but all they can deal with is the estate, not any asset, whatever it would be, that's actually held on trust. Is that correct?
Yeah, it's absolutely correct. And but it's also true to say that the trust, if there is a trust, is always challenged. And it amuses me very often in the way that it's challenged, because it displays the sheer arrogance of either the official receiver or the trustees in bankruptcy. And what I mean by that is, for example, very often the trusts are not registered at Land Registry. So the first thing they say to me, and the arrogance is, their attitude is, we're the professionals. So if we say something, it must be true. I'm just a debt counselor. What do I know? Very often what they'll say to me is, this trust has not been registered at Land Registry and therefore is not legally binding. And my response to that is, Land Registry is neither an authority nor a governing body. They're merely a collector of information. And just because they don't have the information doesn't make this any less legally binding. And then they're, oh, he knows what he's talking about. They just drop that one. And then they'll find another reason why it's not legally binding. And I'll tell them why it is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's definitely a good one about like the land registry, because I mean, there's different types of trusts, though, isn't there? Because you have what like the registration service, which is like HMRC, really. That they've said, well, you have to register these trusts now with this registration service, but that's not always the case, though, is it? Which you don't always have to because it depends on how you've actually created them.
No, you're absolutely right. So, firstly, it would be a remiss of me not to say I do not regard myself as a specialist on trusts. Excuse me, but I am an expert on trusts as it relates to what we do within the debt management side. But we did a lot of research when this register was first launched. It's quite complicated to understand what is required to be registered and what isn't. But number one, there's automatically a recognition that some trusts do not need to be registered. So, provided it is a private trust, then that's enough. It is there's no requirement for it to be registered on that register, nor does it need to be registered at Land Registry.
Okay. So I've actually spoken to solicitors about this, and obviously they probably don't care anywhere near as much as you do, and will not have researched it. And it's like, but it still shocks me, and they say, like, well, I'm going to set up a trust and ask them, is it private? And they say, oh, yeah, it's private. It's private between me and you. And then as soon as it's actually created, we're going to register it with the registration service. And so that doesn't sound very private.
I couldn't agree more. And depending on why you're setting up the trust in the first place, would shape or should shape whether you would do that via a solicitor or a will writer who do trusts as well, or somebody like me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But I'm not always the appropriate person, and if I'm not, I'll say so.
Yeah. Oh, that's it, and that's the best way, because I mean, again, when you're passing on business to others, it could get reciprocated, but the benefit is to the client, and always looking after the client is always going to come back, in one way or the other. Karma is good.
Yeah. No, I couldn't agree more. And as I said, it goes back, always do what's right by the client, even if it means not doing any business, which also means fundamentally, you're not motivated by money. I've never been motivated by money. That's not to say I don't want it, I don't need it. Of course I do, but I'm not motivated by it. And I find that if you just do the right things for the right reasons, you know what? The money just comes.
Yeah, exactly. Well, again, really, that's like the karma, the positive karma.
Yeah.
If you're doing the right thing for the right reasons, then, you're going to get rewarded somehow, somewhere along the line. That's the way I've always thought.
Yes. Yeah. No, I couldn't agree more. Couldn't agree more. So, yeah, I think we've covered sort of that aspect of it. The other thing, which I always tell people, there's in terms of the way that I work. Number one, I'm paranoid about confidentiality, and even you, Peter, will recognise that sometimes you've given me a referral, for which I always thank you, and I've never told you what I've done for the client. I've merely informed you. Just want to let you know I've spoken to them. Because I'll never breach confidentiality, and I think that's so important. The other thing, people, all my clients know, and I always tell my clients, when I'm with them, my phone is switched off. In the same way I'm with you now, my phone is switched off because my focus is always on the person that I'm talking to. Equally well, all my clients know that if I don't pick up, if they phone me and I don't pick up, then I always return the call either the same day or the next working day.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's necessary to be very professional, to have your standards, to keep to those standards. And again, that's what helps the world go around.
Absolutely, absolutely. Just to quickly go back a little bit to I was talking about the solicitors there who don't seem to sort of like get this picture at all, but they're doing their own thing, which they're professional at, which is fine, and they're expert in a different field. I'm not saying anything bad about them, you know, but like on when they're saying, oh, I'm going to do this private trust, and they just don't seem to get it. So what would be how would you say, well, it's a private trust compared to what they would do and go and register it?
Well, I'm not totally sure how to answer your question because, as I say, I'm not an expert on trusts as a subject. All I can say is if it's a simple bare trust, then it does not need to be registered.
Cool.
Especially if the trust is usually within family members.
Okay.
Most trusts are between parents and the children. I've got a house, I want the children to have it.
Yeah, it's quite normal, really.
Yes, that's the majority. If you owed me money and as part of the negotiations you offered to have a property held in trust for my benefit, I would insist it was be registered at Land Registry.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah. Mm-hmm. Okay, absolutely. Cool. That's brilliant. The the thing is, obviously, it's good to be able to work together and pass sort of contacts in between each other and business between each other, because that always benefits the client at the end of the day, and that's the ones that we need to look after before anyone else, before ourselves, for sure.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more. But also, I'm trying to think. About 2 years ago, my oldest son wanted to purchase a new home, and I put him in touch with an excellent conveyancer that I've probably used for the best part of 20 years. And he's like really on the ball, responds to everything immediately. And in fact, because he was my son, he'd already had a lot of the file prepared before my son had formally instructed him. But he's that efficient. However, the vendor's solicitor was diabolical. I mean, really diabolical, to the extent that it became quite possible that my son might lose the purchase. And one of the things I had to say to him, and I'm saying to you now, is the sad truth is that the vast majority of people, irrespective of their trade or their profession, are at best mediocre at what they do, or otherwise not very good at all. And there are very few people that are really good at what they do. And that is one of the biggest frustrations. But I also think that, again, when you understand that, one becomes very choosy as to who one associates with. And I only associate with people that I recognize are experts in their field. And that's why you and I get on so well together, because we both recognize each other's areas of expertise.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, totally agree with that. Absolutely. Now,
just to lighten the mood for a second before you go into the next question. Do you, since we were talking about solicitors, do you know why sharks never attack solicitors?
No, come on then.
Professional courtesy.
Oh dear.
I'll let you decide whether you edit that out or not.
I'm writing that one down as well. There we go. Okay. So, I mean, what I wanted to do as well, just to make sure before I forget, because I'm getting, when we get towards the end of things, it's like, you know, everything goes out of your mind, you forget to ask. So, you mentioned the actual company's name, but not any websites or anything. So, for like, you know, Lightside Financial. So what is the...
Okay, on the regulated side, it's light as opposed to dark. So one word, lightsidefinancial.com.
Lightside, and I'll put that in the description as well. Lightsidefinancial.com.
Yes, and at the moment, BM Strategist doesn't have a website.
Okay, no worries. So, I mean, what would be the best way to actually to get in touch with yourself if they wanted to get directly in touch with you? Through the email, or?
It would be barry@lightsidefinancial.com. And they'll also find Barry Mitchell on LinkedIn.
Cool. Financial.com. Excellent. All right. So I'll put that in the description as well. But, you know, lightsidefinancial.com for the actual website part of it. That's the regulated side, you said, yes?
Yes.
Okay. And then Barry at lightsidefinancial.com, and that's going to just go like to you. And then if they have any questions or whatever on either the regulated or unregulated.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely.
So brilliant. So is there anything else you want to say that quickly? But I don't want to hold you too long, but I want to get all the nuggets out of you though.
No. Again, I think just the main thing is for everyone to remember, no matter what the financial issue is, there is always a solution, and we'll always come out with a way forward. But that doesn't happen unless they talk to somebody. So don't bury the head in the sand. That's what really riles the banks, the credit card companies, is when people refuse to talk to them. The other thing is just to empower people, and I think this is quite important. Very often, people are so scared of their finances, which I completely understand. I've been there myself. They're frightened into not even answering the phone because they don't want to take that call. And I think that in itself is a mistake. So if a bank was going to phone me, the conversation will always start off with, "Hello, is that Mr. Mitchell or is that Barry Mitchell?" It always starts off in the same way. And I have a standard response to that question, which I pass on to all my clients. And that is, I can neither confirm nor deny who I am. But if you think you're talking to the right person, send a letter. And suddenly you're empowered because now you are in total control. You see, under GDPR regulations, the banks are not allowed to talk to you unless they've confirmed, satisfied themselves that they are talking to the right person. So you don't need to lie. You don't need to do the stupid things like, no, that's my twin brother or that's my twin sister. Just use that phrase. I can neither confirm nor deny who I am, but if you think you're talking to the right person, send a letter. And then if you've instructed somebody like me or anybody else, you just give a copy of that letter to whoever's representing you, and they will decide whether a response is required or not. And if it is required, certainly from what I do, I would be responding on your behalf. So you're in control. And very often they'll say things like, "Oh, but I just want to discuss your account." To which you say, "I've already said I can neither confirm nor deny who I am, and I really can't have this conversation." And you'll find they're always pleasant. They're not rude. They won't shout at you. They're always pleasant. And they'll just say something like, "Oh, okay." And then 2 or 3 days later, you'll receive a letter.
Yeah. I mean, that is the good thing. I always try and tell people, look, everything has to be dealt with a letter, because it gives you that little bit of breathing space and thinking time anyway. You know, obviously, if you've got somebody like yourself working on it, there's the gap to pass that on to you. But even if they're just looking at it themselves, it gives them that time to take it in and then, you know, sort out a reply, rather than these snap replies that people would actually say and get themselves into maybe more grief, as it were, you know, like if they're doing it on the phone or whatnot.
I know of somebody, not a client of mine, but I know of somebody who lost their home because of really one word that they said wrong in a sentence over the phone, and they, because of it, lost their home.
Yeah, no, I can believe that easily. It's very possible, yeah, for sure. And that's why I always tell everybody, you know, it's got to be done by mail, because you can, even if you've wrote it out, you can always sit at it, look at it, and change it before you've sent it, rather than blurting something out and you think, oh dear, you know. Times you might not even know what you've said.
Yeah. Well, certainly this individual didn't know at the time. And by the way, when I say write a letter, they will write a letter because you haven't confirmed who you are. But moving forward, the correspondence can be by email or letter, snail mail. Either is okay. The main thing is you then have a paper trail of every communication.
So, because there's a lot of people would say point blank, it always has to be mail, because they won't admit to receiving emails. Is that something that you find, or do you think that they're okay with that?
No, they're okay with it. I've never had a problem like that.
Well, that's good to know, because you know they do. Go on.
So I was just going to add, sometimes if I have had a conversation over the phone, I immediately email them saying, referring to the phone call that we just had, this is what you said, this is what I said, just wanted to confirm the details. And that way, again, you've still got a paper trail of a verbal conversation.
Yeah. No, absolutely. That's absolutely brilliant. So I always do, like when I'm talking to anyone, I always make loads and loads of notes. I like to know it back. And
whilst you're looking through that, very often when I'm sending emails to clients, I will then send them a text message saying I've just sent you an email. That gives them the opportunity to find it if it went to spam. But they can't then say I didn't receive it.
Yeah, no, that's definitely a good way of doing it. Yeah. It's always good if you're sending emails to your clients anyway, just to text them and make sure that they know it's actually in there if they do have to check for spam, etc.
Yeah, exactly.
Brilliant. Okay, well, I think I've got your details there where we've said it, but I'll also put them in the actual description as well for the interview and the video, which is like where's it gone? Lightsidefinancial.com. Or if it was rather, email Barry at lightsidefinancial.com if they want to go straight to you.
Sure. Yep.
Absolutely brilliant. Well, thank you very much for that. hopefully you enjoyed it, and you'll come back on again sometime in the future.
I always enjoy talking to you, Peter.
I'm an enjoyable conversationalist.
Absolutely. No, that was very good. Thank you very much. It's good seeing you, talking to you again. And I look forward to the next time.
Brilliant. All right. Thank you very much. Okay. See you all later then, people. And remember, all the descriptions, all the details for contacting either the actual site or for Barry himself will be in the actual description as well. So do take care, and I will see you all soon.